Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the Battle for the Virginia Central Railroad custom multiplayer game, Episode 3, Gathering Information. In Episode 2, we met the two teams a little bit more, and we watched as both sides made their battle plans for the game. We analyzed those plans a little bit, and then we watched as they made their first moves in the game. In this episode, we're going to reveal the unexpected events which occur for both sides. I did hint at that in the last episode, so we're going to talk more about that in this one. We're going to discuss how each side reacts to these unexpected events, and we're going to review the next few hours of gameplay as the morning progresses and the two armies come together. So this is the battlefield map at 6:40 a.m., just as a refresher so you kind of have a visual image of what the battlefield looks like as we begin this discussion. So one of the things that I did in this game is I gave each side a little bit of intel at 7 a.m. and I would do the same thing at 8 a.m. and once more at 9 a.m. as you'll eventually see down the road. I wanted to force the commanders to perhaps burn a timeout earlier than they anticipated because of new intel coming in. I think that's part of the fog of war that we don't have in these games and that I have the opportunity to put into it when I do these custom multiplayer games. Is that there's always new information coming in. There's rumors, there's scouts, and I just kind of wanted to recreate that for these commanders. So let's start with the Union side. So the scenario I gave them is listed on the screen there. And basically, it's that there was muffled cannon fire coming from south of the South Anna River. And the backstory is that Custer's brigade fired a few artillery shots at the Confederate cavalry as they rode away from the reconnoitering mission. And Meade was now forced to realize that perhaps the Confederates had heard this muffled cannon fire and would react accordingly. And the situation here also includes a situation in which Buford has sent some scouts north of the North Anna River to take a look around there to investigate a dust cloud seen in that area. Lastly, on the bottom there, Meade was waiting on word from his own personal scouts, which had ridden to spy on Beaver Dam the evening before. So there's a lot of things going on here. Meade has some intel. He knows that they've heard some cannon fire, and that their cover might be blown as a result of Custer firing those shots. He also knows that there's dust clouds north of the North Anna River which are unexplained and will be unexplained for another hour. It could be the entire Confederate army for all he really knows. Lastly, he has more word coming at 9 a.m. from Beaver Dam, so the Federal High Command is now forced to either take a timeout to discuss this information or really process it in whatever way they want to process it. So what does all this mean? Well, from a gameplay perspective, as I said, each side has only 6 command meetings to use on the first day of battle. And does Meade really believe that the rebels would send large forces to the South Anna River to investigate the cannon fire? Or does he believe the rebels will think little of it and send only a small unit to recon there? So fundamentally, should Meade alter his plans altogether based on a few cannon shots? With more intel to come at 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. as I said, does Meade save his timeouts for when the intel is available, or does he just use one of his timeouts now to let people know there's been cannon fire and the cover might be blown? I'm very interested to see what Meade does here. So, the discussion began between Meade and his chief of staff. Although the cannon fire is regrettable, I don't believe that it benefits us to call a command meeting or to change our plans. We will continue forward as planned. I agree, Humphreys said. There are no indications of any large rebel force in that area as of yet, basically talking about across the South Anna River. I think that over time a threat will develop against our flanking forces, but not yet. Therefore, the Federals would continue on their routes towards the Bend and keep moving as they had originally planned at the beginning of the battle. My 2 cents real quick about the Union decision. Meade chose to completely ignore the artillery fire and hoped the rebels would do the same. I don't see the rebels carrying on with their original plan once they actually get word of these cannons being fired. I think, or at least I hope, they begin to adjust their plans immediately and send someone to investigate the South Anna River. If they do that, it's going to be possible that the rebels will now be more prepared than their Union counterparts for the coming battle, as they are at least going to have more time to reposition and to mentally prepare for whatever is about to hit them from the south. So this could be a missed opportunity for the Union based on what the Confederates do. And let's talk about the Confederates now. So they're presented with a dilemma the same as the Federals were. For Lee and the Confederates, they were informed from foragers to the south that there was cannon fire heard south of the South Anna River, but it quickly went away. So Meade has to process that. He also found out that there are dust clouds north of the North Anna River. These are the same dust clouds that Meade has been informed about and is investigating. The Confederates did send some cavalry scouts north of the North Anna River, but they are not expected to return until 8 a.m. with their findings. Lastly, Stuart's Corps, they still had that one brigade out scouting, and they would not be back until 9 a.m. with their intel. So now Lee has to wonder what his next move should be. Does he call a command meeting and address the cannons to the south, or does he carry on as originally planned? Let's go back to the map here and the conversation between Lee and his chief of staff. Taylor began the conversation by saying the cannons firing to the southwest is worrisome, but it may just be Lomax's cavalry brigade running into some federal force on the other side of the South Anna River. Without more information, I see no reason to change plans. And Lee agreed. We have no concrete information to pass on at this time, and I'm certainly not about to junk the whole plan that we've created without an excellent reason. Artillery fire could mean anything. We will carry on. Therefore, the Confederates will continue to advance to the northwest, towards the bend, and around it. So my 2 cents here, and it's going to be a little bit different than it was for the Federals. Basically, what are the rebels doing? Cannon fire should probably send some warning signals to you that something's going on, right? Because Stuart has failed to gather any intel whatsoever up to this point in the game. And it's the biggest problem that the Confederates have. They just don't have any cavalrymen doing anything as far as intel goes. And this is really hurting them. With this new intel, combined with the warnings and intuitions of Longstreet and Hill, even before the battle started, all this together should warrant Lee calling a meeting to get more opinions on the situation and just what is going on. But all that being said, Lee is carrying on. Maybe with more intel at 8 a.m. he will call a meeting. Or maybe he will just wait until 9 a.m. I don't know. I know it's got to be hard for these guys to figure out when to use those 6 timeouts, but we're going to have to wait and see. The Federal infantry should be spotted sooner than 9 a.m. though. So this is going to be interesting once that Federal infantry is spotted to the south, what the Confederates do. But hey, let's get back to the battle. Neither side opted to use a timeout here, and let's see what happens. It is 6:40 a.m. on September 19th, and this is the statistics for the 2 sides. As you can see, there's been absolutely no action as of yet. Looking at the battlefield now, it's 6:40 a.m. Let's go ahead and advance to the 7 a.m. movements. You can see all the forces there moving a little bit. And we have to talk about Stuart some more. I hate to keep harping on Stuart, but this is the biggest story that's going on right now. And he continues to do absolutely nothing. And he's actually falling back at this point towards Bumpus, which, again, doesn't make any sense. I don't know what else to say at this point. You have to know when your plan isn't working. And right now, I don't know if Lee and Stuart know that. The original plan, I think, was for Stuart to reconnoiter on the flanks, to screen the army, and if possible, ambush whatever Federal cavalry was coming their way. And none of that is occurring. And I wish the Confederates had used a timeout to gather their thoughts and to give Stuart some fresh orders, because right now nothing is being accomplished. Stuart is concentrated in just this small area here, and he has 10,000 men and 38 guns. This is a giant Confederate cavalry force. He could easily have made the bend, taken that objective, and had Buford back on his heels. Because going up against him is just this small force right here of Chapman's brigade. They've got 1,200 men. Now, granted, combined, Buford has 5,100 men and 16 guns, but that's still nothing compared to what Stuart has. Plus, Stuart has higher quality men, and he has infantry a heck of a lot closer than Buford does. So this is just a major lost opportunity for the Confederates. So we're going to move ahead now to the 7:20 a.m. turn. And Buford will soon spot Ewell's corps moving to the northern part of the map. And that's going to be the first time that the Federals spot any of the Confederate infantry, and we're going to have to see how they react to that. Meanwhile, Wickham's brigade has opted to not scout the southern flank of the army and instead turned north to, I don't know. They're heading towards the rear of the 1st Corps column, and they're going towards the middle of the battlefield. I can't even explain it. If they had just turned to the south, I don't know what exactly is going on with the Confederate cavalry. They need to address this at the next command meeting. And I'm glad that I'm not the only one noticing this, because Taylor spoke up in his conversation with Lee. I do not understand why Stuart is being so passive in trying to find enemy forces in front of us, especially on our flanks. It seems like we are giving all the early initiative to the enemy. Our cavalry seems to be primarily concentrated in between our 3 advancing infantry columns. I don't understand why. If there is an infantry fight in the center, the cavalry will have to leave rather than fight. It is our flanks which should concern us more. Lee replied that I believe Stuart is doing what he believes he has been ordered to do. He was ordered to withdraw in front of Pleasonton's cavalry, protect our columns, minimize losses, and when the infantry gets closer, to move to assist them. We hope the enemy is entrenching at the bend, so we might wrap around their flanks and attack them as we planned. But with the intel of the guns being heard to the south that we received, and the expected intel coming at 8 a.m., I plan to call a meeting at that time to discuss developments. A meeting with Stuart to discuss what to do next will be needed. I think that's understating it. They desperately need to get on the same page with Stuart and revise his orders. Moving ahead to the 7:40 a.m. turn, and there's a lot of confusion on the Confederate side of the map. Longstreet began to move north and then changed his mind. The 3rd Corps sent some troops to the south, and then they quickly came back. So there seems to be a little bit of uncertainty with what's going on, and Stuart remains largely immobile. And the Federals have now spotted actually both Ewell and Hill during this turn. This is the first time that the Federals have spotted Confederate infantry, and it just so happens they spotted 2 of the 3 corps on the same turn. And this really underlies the importance of cavalry. This is what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be going to find the enemy infantry. Advantage Federals up to this point. As talked about before, there is more intel coming to both sides at 8 a.m. For the Federals, the cavalry scouts sent north of the North Anna River discovered that the dust cloud was really nothing. It was just local citizens fleeing the coming battle with their livestock. No enemy forces were spotted north of the river, and they reported that Lee was rumored not to be crossing the river in that direction. That was definitely good news for Meade, and now he was just waiting on his personal scouts to return from Beaver Dam with the last piece of Union intel at 9 a.m. And with this intel coming in, it was pretty easy for me to just say, there's no reason to take a timeout. I don't see the need. Nothing's really changed. We'll get more information at 9. So I think that's the good move. And what does all this mean? Well, I think it means that Meade is carrying on like a champ. He's sticking to his original battle plan. He's not worried about the cannons. He's not worried about what's going on north of the North Anna. He's sticking to his original objective of taking the bend and forcing the Confederates to fight on the ground that the Union chooses. I also like the decision here because you don't have to burn a timeout just to tell people you didn't find something. And the rebels have posed really no threats in this game so far to any Federal infantry or cavalry units. Everything is going as well as it possibly could be for the Federals. So let's go over to the rebel intel that they get at 8 a.m. Basically, they get the same message. They get the message that the dust cloud north of the North Anna is from local citizens moving away from the expected battlefield. But from these citizens, they learn something that Meade is unaware of. They learn that the citizens from Louisa reported that the enemy infantry were entering the town from the south and not from Gordonsville as might be expected. Meanwhile, Stuart's Cavalry Corps still has one brigade out scouting, and they will return at 9 a.m. with the last of the Confederate intel. And this is the third hint that I've given the Confederate side that not everything is as it seems going into this battle. There was the pre-battle warnings, the hints that something was amiss. There was the cannon fire south of the South Anna River. And now there is word from citizens that the Federals are entering towns from the south as opposed from the west, which might be more expected if they were moving from Gordonsville. So will Lee call a halt and discuss things with his commanders? This is a lot of information, and in my opinion, they have to call a timeout and get everyone back on the same page. With this new intel, the conversation began with a lot of talk between Lee and Taylor about Stuart's Corps and whether their original orders were poorly explained or poorly executed. But it was felt that, no matter the cause, the initiative and the momentum were squarely with the Federals up to this point, and I completely agree. The Confederates decided to call their first time out and get with all their commanders, sharing with them the news that the cannon fire had been heard south of the South Anna, and that there was nothing up north of the North Anna, but that it was reported the Federals were entering the towns from the south. Longstreet spoke up first to say that I hope to learn more from Stuart's detached brigade once they return from their scouting mission. But for now, I feel that Hill's Corps is the most vulnerable if the enemy is planning some sort of offensive operation against us. With the enemy in possession of the majority objectives in this area, I see no reason for them to continue to attack us, and I expect them to play it conservatively moving forward. We may wish to be more aggressive and to strike to the southwest in the hope of hitting any enemy flank in that direction. In any open fields, we find them. Moving directly on the bend will likely be too costly. Stuart now spoke up. I believed a larger Union force was in front of me, and so I attempted to tread carefully and hide my forces, hoping they would make a mistake. I agree the enemy cavalry seems weaker than anticipated, and we should act more aggressively. I am attempting to get men out on our flanks, but it will take some time to do this. A.P. Hill then spoke. I urgently need cavalry scouting to the south of my position. I may have to shift into a defensive posture, but it is too early to say. The enemy holds the initiative because of our lack of clear intel to this point. We will now have to adapt to whatever comes our way. Ewell said, I plan to continue the march of the 2nd Corps to the northwest before turning south to strike at the bend from the flank. I could use cavalry to screen my front as well. With all the input from his commanders, Lee and Taylor joined the conversation. Our offensive must continue, Lee said. The enemy has better position, and we cannot presume they will attack us just because we wish that they would. We were too conservative this morning, and I accept the blame for that. We must move now. Our best opportunity for offensive success seems to be with Ewell's column to the north. He will continue his movement with the eventual goal of getting behind the Federals at the bend. He will lead our attack. Longstreet will advance on the bend directly to pin the enemy in place with a frontal approach. But do not throw your men into a meat grinder there. Another division will move to support Ewell, while the other will be our reserve at Fredericks Hall. Hill will continue his advance to the south of the bend and look to attack the enemy there. Given the uncertainty with our southern flank, he is to keep a close watch on his flank for the enemy. Lastly, Stuart is now authorized to be as aggressive as he wishes. We need intel in the worst way. Make it happen. So my quick 2 cents about the command meeting the Confederates have had, and overall it was an excellent meeting and probably an overdue one. They should have done this an hour ago and already have gotten Stuart and everybody else on the same page. but that's just my opinion. They realized, and perhaps too late, that their earlier caution has allowed the Federals an advantage in this battle. And they talked about it in their meeting, the fact that they just don't have the information that they need, especially on their flanks, to make really good decisions here. And so they're hoping over the next hour that Stuart can get more eyes on more places and they can begin to formulate some picture of what the Federal Army is up to. And for the sake of this game, I surely hope they can, because as of right now, all the momentum is with the Federals. They have so much more intel than do the Confederates. Alright, moving now to the 8 a.m. turn. This is the first turn that the Confederates have taken since their command meeting. You are beginning to see just a little bit of action between the two sides. Long-range artillery fire, some skirmishing fire between the 3rd Confederate Corps and some of Buford's cavalrymen, but still not much action. But the big news here is that Stuart has moved, and he's moved offensively, and in a hurry. And what's kind of crazy about this is that I think the Federals have been caught off guard. They've gone into battle line, they've kind of began to get accustomed to the Confederates not being very aggressive here with their cavalry movements, and suddenly the script has changed. So we're going to see how they react, but it's going to be an interesting couple of turns because Stuart far outnumbers Buford, especially around the Bend area. Meanwhile, if you remember, Davis's brigade began marching towards Hanover Junction and Nowell Station on turn number 1, and they have been reversed. This is a correction that I am very glad to see because Davis was just going nowhere. He was leaving the battlefield essentially. He's coming back towards where the fight is expected to be. That is a good move. Meanwhile, Wickham's brigade has completely reversed course, thank goodness. He was heading towards the middle of the battlefield, and now he's heading to the south to get on the 3rd Corps flank and begin scouting the South Anna River. So all these things are good to see from the Confederate perspective. And as I mentioned, there's just been a lot of little light action around the battlefield, but nothing major yet. Rotating to the 8:20 a.m. turn, and as mentioned, the aggressive moves by Stuart have completely caught Buford flat-footed. The Confederates have managed to actually isolate a Federal cavalry regiment there, and they started to play havoc all across this front as Buford is starting to fall back and rethink what exactly is going on here. Not only that, but because of all this movement, Stuart has now sighted the 1st Union Infantry. He's got eyes on the 3rd Federal Corps, and they can see them moving towards the north and the Bend area. 8:40 a.m., and Buford can see the rebel infantry approaching his flank and his rear area. Buford had tried to reinforce his isolated cavalry regiment to try to break them free from Stuart's grasp, but unfortunately, the Confederate infantry is turning towards that area, and they're going to be there extremely quickly. So Buford is going to have to get the heck out of there as fast as he can. I think he might just have to cut his losses here and run away with whatever troopers he can get saddled up in time. Meanwhile, the rebels have spotted 2 Union Corps now moving northward for the Bend. They had eyes on the 3rd Corps last turn. They continue to watch them move north. And now they have eyes on the 5th Corps as they also move north towards the Bend. So they're getting more intel, and they're beginning to realize that the Federals are coming directly from the south over the South Anna River. Things are about to get really interesting in this battle as the two sides come to that 9 a.m. hour where more information is given to each commander. So that brings us to the end of this episode, the 8:40 a.m. turn. Bringing up the statistics there, you can see there really hasn't been a lot of action. The Federals over the last turn did take some cavalry losses, totaling 113. Again, Stuart's aggression has caught them off guard, and it might pay some big dividends as they have one Federal cavalry unit isolated. So what is up next for this multiplayer game? Well, to be honest, episode 4 is going to be all about the meetings the two sides have planned at 9 a.m. We will look at the overall situation, evaluate the plans the two sides have created, and we're going to talk about perhaps a few missed opportunities for both armies in this game. Lastly, we will look at the makeup of the two armies a little bit more and see how they compare to one another before the real battle begins. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. Again, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you are interested in joining the American Civil War Gaming Club, you can go to acwgc.net for more information. Go ahead and give the video a like if you've watched it all the way through. I always appreciate it. And I will see everyone back here for episode 4. Thank you.